All right, it is the top of the hour, so we are going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. Thank you for joining the webinar today on top 3 records management challenges and how to combat them. We appreciate you joining us today, and the first thing I'd like to do is just take a second and introduce our speakers. My name is Shayna Horka, and I work in product marketing here at Gimmal, and I am joined by Gimmal Solutions Architect Tim Butler. Now, before we get started, I have a couple of housekeeping items to go through. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them on the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen, and we're going to answer as many as we have time for at the end of the presentation. There will be at least one poll question that you will see pop up, so please keep an eye out for that. All answers are anonymous. And as always, if you have any technical difficulties, please let us know so we can assist you. Now, to kick things off, I have a couple of slides here to tell you a little bit about Gimmal and how we can help you take control of your information with our suite of solutions. Gimmal is an information governance software company founded in 2002. Our mission is to help you achieve your information governance goals by providing solutions that balance the value your information provides with the risk it also presents. Whether you're trying to discover information in unstructured data sources, migrate from legacy systems, or comply with policies across multiple repositories, Gimmal can help you achieve your information governance goals. We have a client success team and a global network of partners that deliver solutions in conjunction with key partners like Microsoft and SAP. Gimmal's family of software products work together to let you create an efficient digital workplace. Our comprehensive solutions include migration from legacy systems, file analysis and e-discovery, electronic and physical records management, and document management for SAP content. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Tim so he can get started with today's presentation.
All right. Thanks, Shayna. Appreciate that. And yes, everyone, as Shayna mentioned, I do want to thank you for spending a few minutes of your busy day with us. We are grateful for that. We do appreciate it. And as always, I hope the few minutes we have together you will find to be helpful. You can submit comments and/or questions in the chat or afterwards as well. We will provide emails for you to send follow-up questions reflecting what we discuss here today. Now, guys, the webinar today, as you can see on the slide in front of us, really broken up into 2 parts, cleverly named Part 1 and Part 2. The meat of the presentation, if you will be covered in Part 1, where we're going to talk about the abstract that was delivered to you via email, records management challenges that I have seen, that Gimmal as an organization has seen over the decades that we've been doing this. And you can see the sub-bullets there. We'll jump into each of those in just a few minutes. And then at the end of this part 2, what I did, guys, before the webinar, actually a couple of weeks ago, I just reached out to quite a few records managers in the industry that I have worked with over the years, people that I respect, people that have been in the industry for a long time. And I sought their advice as well. I said, hey, I'm going to share in a webinar with Gimmal what I have seen, what Gimmal has seen, but I appreciate your input. And I'm happy to share with you, condensing, I couldn't share every single thing they sent me, but condensing and collating what they sent, you'll see what some of your elders, if you will, what their suggestions were in part 2. But guys, before we get to that, as Shayna mentioned, we do have a poll question here for you. And you can hopefully see that on your screen. As an organization, where is most of your information? Not just records, guys, but actually raw information. Where is that stored? As you're taking just a minute here to read through the list, appreciate that I am fully aware there's way more repositories than what you see listed here. We are limited to just 10, so I kind of picked 10 of the more common ones, and I know some of you certainly have. In fact, all of you probably have multiple repositories. In that case, if you would just pick the primary or one of the primaries, we would appreciate you taking a minute just to give us some industry intelligence here. We're always eager to gain this information. If you do happen to choose other in the chat, we would also be grateful if you could share with us what your other repository was for the information that you're storing as an organization. All right, and just a second, here we go. Here's the results coming up, and all right, not a surprise, actually. You can see the big orangish red bar at the very top, network file shares, more than half of you. Really not surprised at all. That's a little bit sad, but it happens to reflect reality. It's what we've been seeing for a long time. Give you guys just a minute to digest this. We will be sending out a recording afterwards, guys, so you can look at this and glean information later. Surprised to see a couple of these as zeros, but on the whole, not that unusual. So let's close that. Appreciate it, guys. Appreciate you taking the time to fill in that information. All right, so let's jump back now to the webinar, guys. So challenge number one, if you will, what we have seen as an organization, what I have seen personally over the years, really revolves around what I've called collaborators. And to oversimplify just slightly, I've kind of created 5 groups here, pretty obvious stuff, right? From a records management perspective, the success of your program will depend upon these 5 groups, right? So there's the executives, of course. These are the folks in one way or another that tell you what to do. They are your bosses. They are the ones that say, yes, we will have a records management program, and you've been hired to make that program work. You've got your IT, right? These are the individuals who speak one of various dialects of technical mumbo jumbo, with whom at some level you need to work with them to make your records management program successful. Right in the middle, of course, right? There's the records managers themselves. Hopefully that's most of you in the webinar today. You may be on your own, you may be part of a larger team, but of course, central to the whole records management program and the challenges that arise from it are the records managers themselves. Moving across the page, of course, there's the records owners and users. These are, typically speaking, guys, right, the end users. These are departments, the end users who create the records, who use the records during their active life cycle, those who request information, those from whom you seek permission at the end of life for disposition purposes. Usually a pretty big population, right, of records owners and users. And then our last group of collaborators here are the records custodians. If you're still working with paper or hard copy records, these would be the warehouse personnel, or if you're using a third-party offsite vendor, it would be the personnel for that particular vendor. But then with electronic records, of course, this comes a little bit full circle back to IT, right? The custodians of your electronic records, those who are responsible for the health and well-being of the repositories, usually that falls upon IT. Now, because webinars don't really lend themselves to conversation and discussion, right, guys? I'm going to ask rhetorically, what do these 5 groups share in common? Okay, you ready for it? They are people. Woo! So you're probably, thanks, Tim. News bulletin, big flash there. What's the point? Well, the point is this, guys. At the risk of stating the incredibly obvious, I want to emphasize the obvious, right? In the end, your records management program, the success of it will depend upon people. Now, why have I seen this to be a challenge? Partly, it's based upon the stereotype, somewhat true, of the historical records manager, right? It's that introverted wallflower who's down in the basement corner office who just got out of college with their library science degree, and they just want to have their nose in the records management. Guys, it's just not the 21st century. We could have used this challenge for virtually any webinar we do, but I wanted to emphasize it from a records management perspective. People are difficult to work with. As a records manager, that center circle, you are going to need to be successful to work with people. So whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you need to have people skills. Very basic challenge along with the solution here, guys. In the end, your records management program is focused and utilized and centers around people and your relationships with them. So challenge number 1, if you will, is working with people. Be a people person, right? Number 2, in terms of challenges, records management and records repositories. And you'll see where I'm going with this in just a minute. But by way of review, guys, I went ahead and I went out to the web, right? I grabbed from ARMA via Wikipedia the definition, if you will, or the working definition of what is records management. Most of you, I'm sure, have seen this, but let's just read it quickly. Records management, also known as records and information management, is an organizational function devoted to the management of information in an organization throughout its life cycle, from the time of creation or receipt to its eventual disposition. This includes identifying, classifying, storing, securing, retrieving, tracking, and destroying or permanently preserving records. Nice definition, very academic, whoever came up with this. But at the core of it, guys, the gist of this is what I've bolded and underlined. It's the management of information. Guys, in the end, that is what you do. You manage the information. Now, where am I going with this? I'd like to use an analogy that I hope you will find helpful. In fact, I hope you'll remember this. The odds are a month from now, a year from now, this will be the only thing you remember from this webinar because it's a bit of a story. It's an analogy. People tend to remember those things. I find it helpful. I hope you will as well. I love going to Home Depot and Lowe's. I get it, right? And now I understand when I'm following my wife through a Kohl's or a JCPenney or a Joann's Fabrics or one of the other bazillion stores that she walks through, and I'm rolling my eyes, I remind myself, Tim, you do the same thing in a Home Depot. Why? Because I like it. I go there. I'm interested in what they have. The contents of those stores, the assets that they have are things that I'm interested in, things that I want, things that I, in air quotes, need. It's fun to go to Home Depot. And one of the reasons it's fun to go there for me is because the store is organized, right? When I need to find something, if I'm working at home and I've got an electrical problem, I know exactly where to go. I go to the electrical aisle in the Home Depot. If I've got a plumbing issue, I go to plumbing. If I need some wood, I walk back to the lumber department. Everything is organized. I know where to find it. Let me ask you a question though. Let's say you go to Home Depot and you are looking for spline. You know, that rubberized strip of material, right, that you use in conjunction with screens, be they window screens or door screens. I don't actually know, right? There's no spline department, right? It's not a big selling item. It's not accessed a lot, if you will, but it is there, but I don't know where it is. But here's another reason why I love Home Depot, right? I have their app. Their app is on my phone, and if I happen to be there and I don't know where something is, I can type in spline, and lo and behold, there it is, aisle 36, bay 2. I can find what I need. It's organized. There's metadata, if you will, that supports the location of everything within that store. Now, flipping that analogy for just a minute, guys, imagine that the Home Depot, rather than being organized by department and shelf and aisle and bay and all that, imagine that it was just a big, as soon as you walk through the front door, what you walked into was just a big pit, right? It was just a pit. They had all the same stuff that they have now, but there was no organization. It was just lying around on the floor in this big pit. Now, if I'm going there and I'm looking for something big, say a lawnmower, well, I can probably find that in that pit. But if I'm looking for spline, I am not going to find it. In fact, I'm going to leave that repository, if you will, that store, empty-handed and frustrated because I cannot find what I'm looking for. Now, where am I going with this whole analogy, if you will? Coming back now to the slide itself, guys, your content repositories, where you choose to store information. And it was one of the reasons I asked the poll question that I did up front. Guys, there are repositories that lend themselves or are suited to records management, and then there are those that are not. You guys even kind of indicated this up front. I think it was 53% of you, the primary or one of your primary repositories are file shares. Guess what, guys? File shares don't really lend themselves very well to records management. Now, Gimmal, like lots of other vendors, we have tools to leverage file shares because we have to, because they're ubiquitous, right? Everybody has them. But given a preference, all of the vendors, Gimmal included, we're wanting repositories that are structured in such a way, and you can see it on the slide here, that they support sufficient metadata. It's the big names of the world, the SharePoints and the other big names in the market that are designed with records management purposes in mind. There are, frankly, guys, a bunch of them out there, and file shares, of course, email, but there's some really popular repositories out there, guys like OneDrive and Google Drive. Those guys, I'm not here to denigrate them. They have their place in life, super convenient. It's a great way to share, to house information, big chunks of information, but they don't really lend themselves well for records management purposes because they don't support a lot of various metadata. Guys, one way to look at those types of repositories, if you will, just to extend that analogy a little bit more, they're a little bit more like those self-storage places, right? You just get a big room and you throw a bunch of stuff in it. And yes, you can go there and wade through it and pull the stuff back out, but they're not really purposed or suited to the records management endeavor itself. So one last point to mention here, guys, in terms of this whole perspective on records repositories. Guys, look at it, if you will, from the end back towards the beginning. And what I mean by that, as an exercise, what you can do, take your records retention schedule. Take a look at that. Look at the triggers, the life cycles, the retention time spans, the justifications, the disposition methods, all the rules, right, that comprise your schedule. With that as a prism, if you will, lay that over top of your existing repository and ask yourself the question, can I execute the rules as found in my records retention schedule based upon the functionality, the features, and the metadata provided by the repositories that I'm using? So again and again, guys, I have seen this as we engage with various clients. One of the big questions we ask up front is, hey, where are you pulling your data out of? When they say file shares, there's a bit of a groan. When they say some of the other more structured repositories, there's a yay, because we know it improves the chances of a very successful implementation. So challenge number 2, records repositories, guys, make sure you're focused on using those that lend themselves to the records management agenda. Now, challenge number 3. What's the best way, guys, to leverage IT resources? Haven't been doing this for more than 20 years now, guys. I would venture to say that speaking with records management personnel, this could possibly be their number 1 gripe, is having to work with IT. Now, I fully appreciate, guys, there's some of you who have IT heroes, and yay for them. They're noble, they work hard, they're smart, they get you what you need. Be thankful for that, right? Because it's not always like that. I'm pretty sure there's quite a few of you on the other end of the spectrum have some horror stories, right, working with IT. And guys, it's not that it's not that they're bad, mean, ambivalent people. It's just that they have their own jobs too. They've got their own tasks as well. And frankly, they, with the exception of those heroes, they are not going to be as invested in your records management program and endeavors as you are. You are just one more thing to do on their to-do list, right? So a little bit tongue-in-cheek here, I'm saying, what's the best way to leverage IT resources? The answer is as little as possible. It will ease your frustration. It will ease their frustration. It is a win-win. Having said that, guys, please appreciate to kind of come back to center here. You need your IT. You're dependent upon your IT. But the last 2 bullet points here are the things you really should consider. Look for cloud-based solutions. Guys, if you're not already aware of this, right, the whole world is going towards the cloud, so much so that in the very near term, if you and your solutions, your tools that you're using are not in the cloud, you are going to be a dinosaur. More and more, in fact, it's almost all the time now, organizations are really adopting a cloud-first paradigm, if you will, that is move to the cloud. Of course, I know there's exceptions, but on the whole, as you investigate and do your due diligence looking for records management tools and solutions, if you come to your IT and say, hey, I found a potential solution here, it is cloud-based, more times than not, you're going to get a big thumbs up. You're going to get that gold star. It's what your IT wants to hear. Secondly, related to it somewhat, there is some overlap. Look for regulatory and security compliance solutions, right? When it comes to hosting solutions and data in the cloud, I'm going to overgeneralize a little bit here, but the gold standard more or less nowadays is what's known as SOC 2, and in particular, SOC 2 Type 2. hand in hand with cloud-based solutions. If you go to your IT and say, hey, I found a cloud-based solution and it's SOC 2 Type 2 certified, that is a win. You're going to ease all kinds of fears. You're going to cut a lot of red tape, just by presenting those two facts to your IT. And then, of course, related and varying depending upon which industry you hearken from. Make sure you've got regulatory compliance solutions, right? GDPR, you're seeing some of the big ones that are in vogue right now. GDPR, CCPA, 21 for our pharmaceutical clients, Part 11, and then HIPAA for healthcare and others. So challenge number 3, leverage your IT resources as little as possible, but be smart about it when you do need to leverage them. So guys, those are the 3 challenges that I have seen, that we have seen as an organization, and very briefly, ways to begin to attack them. On the whole, guys, I'm just trying to remind you at a foundational level what you should be aware of. So if you're new in the industry, if you're new in your position, remember the forest. Don't get so caught up looking at the trees that you forget the overall context in which things live. And these 3 challenges I've seen to be very crucial coming into the context of whether or not your records management program will be successful or not. Now, for the part 2, as promised, as I mentioned right up front here, guys, I did reach out to a number of you. I'm grateful. Some of you may even be on the webinar here that did respond to me. Thank you for doing that. And I've taken your responses. I've condensed them, as I said. But here's what, guys, for the rest of you that I did not reach out to, here's what your peers said. And again, guys, everything you see here comes from someone with decades of experience in the industry. It's pretty good stuff. Number 1, don't underestimate how difficult change is. And I don't have room or time to go into all the details that were around this, guys, but appreciating it kind of brings you full circle back to the people that we talked about up front. Anytime you introduce change, right, it doesn't really matter. This is just a basic principle of life. Generally speaking, change is difficult for people. So if you're introducing new records management tools or new processes, or you're bringing brand new staff in, there's change involved. As a records manager, be patient, be a coach, be encouraging. Remember that you're working with people. People don't like change. Be there to help them. Related to that, guys, point number 2 from your elders, don't neglect training. I think it goes without saying, but I've seen this is forgotten all the time. We think if we've trained somebody once, we're done. It's just not true. There are people that, yep, are awesome. You train them once and they're good forever, but a lot of us are not that way. So whenever your software gets updated, right, that's what happens. New versions come out, new features come out, old features get deprecated. Make sure that you're sending out at some minimal level indications to the users in your program. Hey, here's what's changing. Here's what you need to be aware of. People come and go, right? So whether it's the records owners or whether it's records managers or custodians, people come and go. You've got new people coming on board. Plan, have a strategy in place for those people that are coming in particular. People forget, right? Again, we're all just people. Even the best of us will forget some very basic stuff. And then just sort of a suggestion, guys, in terms of this training, make it at least annual. My own opinion here, don't overburden folks with a 4-hour training session. Just do 30 minutes a year. Refresh them, let them ask questions, be proactive in offering additional training to whoever you work with. Guys, number 3, consider what happens when someone leaves, right? Records owners, custodians, managers, all of the above. One insight into this, guys, do not do to your successor what was probably done to you. A lot of you could tell the story of the program that you inherited, the mess that it was in, the challenges you faced coming into the position you're currently in. Don't be that way. Prepare documentation, leave behind a good legacy for the next person, right? You won't be in this position forever. Leave an awesome program in place, documented properly with training materials, people educated. So remember, people are going to leave, and those people include you at some point in time. Number 4, and we're almost done here, guys. Just a little bit of encouragement, I think, for you, especially for those of you new to the industry. Guys, this is not for the faint of heart. I know there's a little bit of an old stereotype out there. As I mentioned up front, you're kind of just an introvert, and it is just not the case at all. It's the 21st century. Records managers, they need to be people. You've got to be focused, be able to work with people. You got to be smart. You can see in the second bullet there, guys, the landscape is constantly changing. Continuing education is a must. So good for you. You've attended the webinar today. Go to webinars. If ever we have trade shows again, go to the trade shows in person. Attend them remote. Continue to pursue your education in this discipline. It's not a C-level position yet, but guys, over the course of 20 years, I've seen it trend in that direction. More and more, I think you're going to begin to see records management moving up into that C-level suite with all the other positions that are up there. And then finally, guys, a little bit ironic here, right? Gimmal, we're a technology, we're a software provider, but guys, technology is not the solution. People using technology properly is the solution. So I hope those little nuggets of wisdom from your elders were helpful. One thing I found to be quite interesting is when I kind of collated all these and reviewed them, they all concern people, right? This was their advice, that treat your people well and your program has a better chance of success. So guys, appreciate your time today. Thankful for that. I'm going to turn things back over here to Shana to close this out. As always, please follow up with any questions that come to mind. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. So we did a kind of a thought leadership webinar here around what's going on in the market in terms of records management challenges. If you'd like a more in-depth conversation about any of this topical content, or if you'd like more information on our software, go ahead and click the yes option on the poll you should see pop up in a separate window. And then we'll have somebody reach out to you. But while this is going, I also want to remind folks that you can submit questions in the Q&A section on your screen. And we're just going to move right into the Q&A. I have at least one question here, unless others sneak in before we finish. So Tim, do you have recommendations for change management practices with RIM strategies, specifically around software?
Yeah, huge question, guys. Comes up all the time. Change management. It's a big one, guys. And again, I'm going to keep it at a high level because it's a whole webinar in and of itself, the details. But it really boils down to this, guys. Regardless of the level or scope of change, tell people what you're going to do, tell people what you're doing as you're doing it, and then tell people what you did even after it's done, and then rinse and repeat. Change management, you just need to reinforce it, guys. Reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. Change is a scary thing. People need to know that you're available. They know what's coming, they know what's happening, and they know what has just been accomplished.
Great. Unless another one sneaks in, the only other comments we're getting is thank you, Tim, for the wonderful presentation. Oh, here's one. What level should a records manager be at? What does records management report in the organization structure? Or where does it, excuse me, where does records management report in the organization structure?
Yeah, good question. It's all over the map, guys. Actually, it used to be the case that records management fell under facilities, believe it or not, back in the day. That has certainly changed, where you're either in information security management, often you're found within IT itself. But as I briefly mentioned earlier, guys, regardless of which particular department you're located in within an organization, your level of exposure is increasing. You are moving further and further up as records manager. One way to look at it, guys, quick, I'll get 30 seconds here to mention this. As a records management individual, I sometimes liken you all to referees. You are incredibly important. The game can't be played without you. But here's the downside of that. Most of us never, ever notice a referee until they make a mistake. Records management, when I said it's not for the faint of heart, that's part of the reason why they're, right? As long as things are going fine, you're good. But if you make a mistake, you're out in the open. Because of that, it's a much more important position than it used to be, related to the regulatory climate within the industry today.
Great. Well, that's the last one, and timing is pretty perfect here. We are hitting right at that 30-minute mark, so I'll go ahead and close it out. If you can think of any other questions, both of our email addresses have been up on the screen. You can email either one of us, and we will get those questions answered for you. For those of you looking for a recording of this webinar, I know Tim mentioned it earlier, but it will be sent out in the form of a thank you email between 24 to 48 hours. You can also find it on our website right there on the screen, www.gimmal.com, as well as all of our webinar recordings. If both of our names are too hard to remember how to spell, info@gimmal.com also gets to us. So feel free to email us at any time. Thank you for joining today's webinar, and we hope to see you on the webinar next week titled The What and Why of Third-Party Discovery Tools for Microsoft 365. We hope you have a great rest of your day.